Welcome to Lightning 2. Since it's coming up very quickly, it's time for the classroom session. So in our ongoing series, today's session is designed for student drivers, and it's all about passing and traffic management. Of course, there's a lot here that would apply to drivers in all groups, but there's quite a bit here specifically oriented to newer drivers as well. But with all that said, let's dive right in. The normal disclaimer applies, which says, this is good advice, but you apply it at your own risk. So we talk about driver's education being safe, serious, fun. Well, it turns out that passing and traffic are a huge part of that. It's always a surprise to brand new drivers to find out that in addition to driving on the track, learning the line and all that, that the next biggest challenge, and sometimes an even bigger challenge, is dealing with traffic. And so we're going to spend this session, the next few minutes, on how to be safe and minimize the hassle factor associated with traffic. So it goes without saying to those of you that have been on track that passing and traffic determine how safe the driving is. They determine driver attitudes, because if you're getting held up in traffic or feeling intimidated by somebody on your bumper, you're not going to have a good time, and that detracts from the fun factor. In the track pack, we emphasize courtesy for both drivers being passed and those taking a pass. But in the end, it's all about communication and cooperation, because we give pass signals and take pass signals so that both drivers know exactly what's going on and are exactly on the same page. So let's dive in. What are the basics? Well, we never pass without a signal from the driver. Once in a while, an instructor will give a signal. That should be ignored. Basic rules are one clear signal for each car that you want to pass. And that means the hand has to come down inside the car between the signals. Overtaking cars is to stay on line. And there are minor exceptions to that, but there are no exceptions to that at Lightning. That means you don't move over to be polite or for any other reasons. Staying on line is a big part of being predictable and easy to read. The car taking the pass is going to go offline and has to be prepared to enter the following corner offline. And in fact, in most cases, should just do that and not even try to zip back in front of the car that they've passed. And of course, the overtaking car needs to give a very brief lift. And generally, half a second or a second is all that it takes. And unless you have a monster turbo and the car overtaking you is a low-powered car, then maybe it's a second and a half, but it's not very long. And that makes the pass easier for both cars, because if you're taking the pass, obviously you're by the car sooner. If you're being passed, that means you can resume driving your normal line and pace and such without worrying about the car behind. And that's the reason why we say point sooner than later. Get the pass done as soon as you can, as soon as you're comfortable exiting a corner. So how do we get comfortable in traffic? Well, like anything else, there is preparation that can be done. You can study the track so that you know the line, the passing zones, and in particular, which sides are mandatory to pass on. We're going to talk about that for Lightning in a bit. Videos, track maps, turn-by-turn descriptions will all help you with that. If you're driving in green, on the first day, your instructor will help you monitor the cars behind and indicate when it's time to give a pass signal. Now, if you're up for it and you can do it, great, but don't feel obligated on your first day while you're finding your way around the track and getting comfortable to worry about traffic. Your instructor can help you. But on day two, you should at least be able to manage the front straight, and if not more of the track. And of course, if you're driving in the yellow group or the blue group, then I would expect, and your instructor is going to expect, that you are able to give and take signals in all the passing zones. In that case, your instructor is just a double check. They're not a crutch. So we're going to talk about when to look in the mirrors, how to check your mirrors, how to give pass signals, where to give them, and when to give them. Now, you just heard me mention mirrors. They are an essential, critical part of traffic awareness and management, because we simply must be aware of the cars that are behind. And the corollary to that is you should never be surprised by a car in the mirror. So you're going to hear my Mirrors 101 talk again here. Mirrors need to be adjusted properly. And I'm talking about mainly the side mirrors. Rear view mirror is probably adjusted so you can see the entire rear out the back of the car. And it should be adjusted so you can see as far back as possible. But most people don't have the left and right side mirrors adjusted properly. So here's the technique. Find the button for the left side mirror, lean your head against the driver's window, and push that mirror out until you can just barely see the back corner of the car. Do the same thing on the right side. So what happens is, if your mirror is adjusted like many have them right now, you have a big blind spot on both the left side of the car and the right side of the car. If you adjust them like I just described, you will minimize or eliminate that blind spot. And that's hugely important on the track. When a car is passing you, you want to be able to see where they are, but it's equally important on the highway. So you should do this on all of your vehicles, and you'll be shocked if you're like many people that I've coached to do this, and how big a difference that makes in your driving, day-to-day driving, as well as on the track. So that's how to adjust the mirrors. When do we look at them? Well, here's something for you to think about before you maybe pause the video at this point. When's the most important time to look in your mirrors? At the beginning of the straightaway, the middle of the straightaway, the end, entering a corner, in a corner, exiting a corner? Think about that for a second. If you're not experienced with traffic, this can be a little confusing. So let's try to take away some of that confusion. When do we want to look in the mirrors? Well, entering a passing zone for sure. As soon as your car is straight, before that if you can. But certainly as soon as the car is straight exiting a corner, it's time to look in a mirror. And if a car is there, it'll be time to send them by. We also, though, want to look at the end of a passing zone, because we want to see, yes, we can't give a pass at this point. We're about to hit the brakes, or we're going to enter a corner. There's no passing. But at the end of a straight, we want to see how many cars are back there, and how far away are they, and how fast are they closing. So if we glance at our mirror, entering a braking zone, and see that there's 2 cars, but they're well back, okay, we probably don't have to worry about a pass immediately after the next corner. But if we see, 2 cars back there, and they're pretty close, and they're closing rapidly, now we know that we will most likely have to give a signal after the upcoming corner. Now, the middle of a passing zone, a long passing zone, like the front straight at Lightning, is another place to look for the same reasons. The other passing zones at Lightning aren't that long, perhaps the back straight, but that one isn't that long. But certainly the front straight, and if you're on a bigger track like Watkins Glen or track like that, the longer straights, definitely you have to check the mirrors multiple times. Now, we also want to be mindful of the mirrors during a pass. Remember, I just talked about the side mirrors. Well, if a car is passing you on on the right, on the front straight at lightning, you do want to see where they are. You want them to get by you as quickly as possible out of your way, but you need to know where they are. And clearly that's what the mirrors are there for. The one place we don't want to look in the mirrors, and there's no need to look in the mirrors, is in a corner. There's the good news about the driver's education driving procedure is that we each get to drive the corner at our own pace without any distractions from cars in front or behind. So there could be 3 cars behind, but no, you don't have to worry a bit about that during the corner. So no need to look in the mirrors during a corner. So how do we check the mirror? Well, we do it with frequent, quick glances, and glance is the right term here. If there's a car there, then we use another glance, to confirm exactly how far away it is and so on. We use the side mirrors, when the car is close, again with a glance. We don't have to focus for more than a split second, but we do have to glance, and we do have to glance multiple times, to help with things like closing speed. And this really needs to be a focus and a habit as we drive. If you don't get in the habit of frequently looking in the mirrors, you're not going to be safe, and you're not going to have a good time on the track. Now, this photo isn't the greatest, but if you see it in, from this, shot, that my eyes are in this, instant are glancing at the mirror, the rear view mirror, to see if there's anybody behind me. This isn't lightning, it's VIR, it's the front straight, which is long. So I've just come onto the front straight, and I'm glancing in the mirror to see if there's a car behind. And if so, I can give them a pass on the right. But it's a glance, just like you see here. Now, how do we give passing signals? Well, as early as possible, but we want to make sure it can be seen. And things like contrasting colored gloves really help. Getting your arm fully out the window, whether that's out to the left or over the roof, either way, it needs to be the full arm extension. And if you have a contrasting color shirt, jacket, or gloves, that's even better. If you are in the market for buying gloves, don't buy gloves that are the same color as your car. If you have a black car, buy some red gloves. If you're like me and have a white car, you buy blue gloves. But whatever is a contrasting color with your car. And it needs to be, as I've said before, a clear signal with the hand back inside the car, and with a brief lift, as again, I've said. And there's some nevers here, which amount to aggressive driving. We don't want to race the car to the next corner. That's why the brief lift, let them go by. At the same time, we want to give a signal if a car's behind. We don't want to hold up a faster car. Now, most of you know what a left side pass signal looks like. This is a good example of full arm extension and a bad example of doing the hand signal properly. Pointing the whole hand out the window, I guess I get the idea here, but most of us point a finger. We use our finger and point, and that's much better. Also, in this case, notice that the black glove doesn't offer very much contrast to the silver car. Some better than silver, but not great contrast. So, red or something like that would have been, or even blue would have been better in this case. Now here's a right side signal, a little hard to see in the picture here, but again, the hand is barely over the roof, so probably could be a little bit further over the roof. Again, we know what the driver means, but it could be executed better. So where do we give passing signals? Well, only in a passing zone, of course. If we're entering a passing zone with a car right behind us, absolutely. But also in the middle of a passing zone, if there's a rapidly closing car behind. And this is why those frequent glances in the mirror are really important. You won't know if there's a rapidly closing car if you only look, at the beginning of the passing zone and the end. But if you look a couple of times and you see the car is back a ways, and then you glance again and they're a little closer, and you glance again and they're almost up to you, now we know that car is closing rapidly and we can judge when to give the pass. Now, I said before, we should never be surprised by a car, but sometimes it does happen. And this is where judgment is really important. If the car has caught you in the passing zone, how close are you to the brake markers? If you're at the brake markers, it's too late. You'll have to give the pass signal at the next opportunity. But if there's still some space and it's a rapidly approaching car, perhaps there is time to send the car by. But if the car is only a little bit faster than you are and has slowly wound you in, but not quickly, even if there is a little bit of space, you may decide to wait until the next zone. So judgment experience really has a huge role to play here, and it's not to be underestimated. There's a lot of learning that comes from the seat time in traffic that's hard to explain if you haven't been there and done it. So passing zones at Lightning, pretty straightforward. The front straight, the right is on the right. The front straight here, right side passing. And same thing between turns 1 and 2, right side. No passing at all in the twisty stuff here. Then between 5 and 6, we can pass on the right, and then later on the left. Well, most student drivers find giving a pass on the right fairly hard because it's a very short area and the track is kind of winding in to our right there. So it's much easier generally to immediately come to track right and give all the passes on the left on the back section here. The section between 7 and 9 is the reverse. Early passes can be done on the left, later on the right. But for the same reason I just mentioned for students to generally like to give passes on the left, in the previous zone here, it's a lot easier for most people to give passes on the right. Track out from turn 7, immediately go track left and give signals on the right. So those are the student passing zones at Lightning, and the turn by turn that will follow this will show the track in more detail. So when do we give a passing signal? Well, a car shows up that wasn't there before, right? And that's especially true even if you can outrun them. In fact, it's especially true if you have more power than they do on the straight, but they've caught you, because that means they're quicker over the whole lap. And if you let them by, odds are you won't see them again. If you find that a lower horsepower car has caught you, then you absolutely need to send them by and stay off the gas long enough for them to get by. And following them may be useful to you, to learn what they're doing, better than you are. Now, if you catch cars and they're held up by traffic, this is another place where judgment applies. If there's several cars in a row, what we call a train, obviously the driver at the front of the train needs to be giving more pass signals. But if you're several cars back, one option you have is to roll through the pits and exit the pits on a different section of the track. But again, traffic experience and judgment is huge and only comes with seat time. Now let's talk about the ideal pass. An ideal pass is one where both cars anticipate the event before and during the passing zone. And so the car being passed sees the overtaking car early and gives a signal early enough that the passing car can go by without slowing down, and perhaps the car being passed doesn't have to lift either if they're lower horsepower, or if they do have to lift, it's very brief. So basically, if done correctly, both cars drive uninterrupted laps. Now, if you've got a little bit of experience, you may be saying to yourself, wow, I've never had that happen to me. Well, that may be true in student groups, but I can tell you from lots of experience that it happens all the time this way in upper run groups. And this is the way it should happen as you get more experience. And now, shorter pass zones make this harder, longer pass zones make it easier, but nonetheless, it's something to strive for and to think about in terms of what the ideal pass looks like. So let's wrap up. As I've said, and you know, passing is key to being safe and having fun on the track. It's all about communication and cooperation between both cars. And think of it in terms of etiquette and courtesy, as we say in the track pack. Of course, you need to know and respect all the passing zones, including the mandatory sides. When you're giving a pass, use your mirrors. Be sure to adjust for lower horsepower cars. If you're taking a pass, get the eyes ahead, look ahead, and be patient. Don't, because you catch a car near the brake zone on the front straight of Lightning doesn't mean you're owed a pass. They can give you a pass between 1 and 2. And perhaps the most important thing, remember, that could be your friend in the other car or a future friend. But in any case, it's another driver on the track with the same expectations and excitement that you have for driving, wanting to have fun. And if both drivers approach it with that attitude, then everybody's going to be safe. Everybody's going to have fun. So with that said, I hope you have a great time at Lightning, and I look forward to seeing you at the track very soon. All right. So Lightning turn by turn. A couple of people have joined since we started. Anyone that joined new to Lightning? Jody, Nick, I know you joined since we started. Are either of you new to Lightning? I'm going to assume no, unless I hear otherwise. All right, so let's talk about Lightning. Normal disclaimer here. I'm going to offer some advice about how to drive it, but use your judgment and listen to your instructor, and be sure to be safe. Don't try anything I suggest here that doesn't seem right to you, or that your instructor doesn't agree with. Passing zones, just as a quick reminder, the front straight and the straight between 1 and 2, passing is on the right, and that's mandatory in all groups. To keep things safe. Between turns 5 and 7, here, this section, early between kind of 5 and 6, the passing is on the right. As you get further down and all the passings on the left, most students find that it's a lot easier to give a pass on the left here than it is on the right, because to give a pass on the right, you have to do it very quickly as you track out before turn 6 shows up. But there it is early on the right, later on the left. The section between turn 7 and 9 is the reverse, right? Early on, we pass on the left immediately after turn 7. Later, and again, the easier passing for most students can be done on the right side, after between 7 and 9. I'm not going to spend any time there. So turn 1 at the end of the front straight, as you can see on the overhead here, it's not really 90 degrees. It's somewhat less than that. pretty fast corner uphill, and that modifies what we have to do significantly in this corner. So the turn in is approximately where, if there were a zero brake marker, where it would be. So if you think about the spacing from, from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, if you imagine a zero, that's about where the turn in is. The corner is uphill, and that means we have a somewhat earlier turn in and a somewhat later braking point than we would if the corner were flat. But we do have to get turning done early so that we can be straight to go over the hill. And we have to be careful with the gas pedal here, especially in a high-powered car. As we go over the hill, we want to be straight and not full on the gas. And we want to not be all the way track left as we go over the hill to give ourselves some margin. And this corner has been known to eat cars where people got in too fast or too early, and instead of just driving it off, they tried to keep it on the track, and that's not a good equation. So here's what it looks like from the braking zone. You can see on the left the one brake marker, so we're approaching the end of the braking, but you can clearly see the hill in front of us. You can also tell that from here, while we can see the flag station right here, we cannot see over the hill. So yes, the apex, which is right about there in the middle of the circle, is visible. The track out is not from this point. And in fact, even as we approach the apex, we can't see track out. And you do see the hill here and the need to get the car straight going over the hill. The other factor here is that pit out is on our right. So cars can be entering. They're obliged to stay track right, but don't let that get your vision upset if you do see a car moving on your right here. That can catch people out if they're not expecting it. So here's the track out now that we're over the hill. You see all the dirt on the left here, where lots of people have driven off. And again, if we can drive off here, and there's a lot of real estate out there, so it's fine if we need to. What we don't want to do is keep the car on the track if it doesn't want to stay on the track. And that's true all the way around any track, including especially Lightning. But I use this corner to emphasize that point, because it's a corner where a lot of people have made the mistake of being too fast or too early, and tried to keep the car on the track. So coming up after turn 1 is the complex of 2, 3, and 4. And these are a series of connected corners that are driven, if you will, backwards. They really, we really kind of think about how to get out of 4, but also because of the configuration, 2 and 3 can be driven as a complex of 1 turn. So what does that mean? Well, really the line the line through, I should say, turns 2 and 3 is one big arc. And the way we make that work is we use an apex in turn 2 here, which is not on the curbing. It's roughly 4 feet or so off of the curbing in 2. And if we do that, we make one big arc, one corner out of turns 2 and 3. So that's really important here. And the reason we're doing that is we're lengthening that straight section between turns 1 and 2. Our objective here is to carry as much speed as possible into turn 2 and through as much of turn 3 as we can. We're going to have to slow down for 3 and 4, especially for 4, but since we have to slow down, why don't we carry as much speed as possible through 2 and 3? Some of the reference points here, besides 4 feet off of that curb, the outside curbing of turn 2 really is the turn-in point for turn 3, although it's really just part of the same arc. Sometimes you may have to make a small adjustment of the steering wheel there. And then the apex curbing of turn 3 is, we really want to be on the beginning of that curb, but then off of it. And I'll show you what that looks like. So we're approaching turn 2. We're getting ready to turn in right pretty much where the cone is here. We're approaching the apex at 2 here. This isn't, it makes it look like we're going to hit the curbing here. So this is not the best photo. I need to find a better one for here, because it kind of makes it look like we're actually going to be near the curb here, which we don't want to do. What we do want to do as we continue the arc and into turn 3 here, is, if you notice this is the apex curbing for turn 3. We want to put the right front tire right on the beginning of this curb here, and then let the car go to mid-track or even left as we get to 4. We don't want to try to force the car in. If we simply make this a continuation of that big arc and let the momentum take us, carry us through turn 3, that's what we want to have happen here. So here we are approaching turn 3, the outside. I don't think I have a photo of it. No, I don't. Let me back up. So the point where we are finishing turn 2 at the outside of the track and turning in for 3 is kind of out here, and it doesn't show up very well here in the photo. Here's the apex of turn 3, and here's that curb that we want to be on the beginning of. Where the cone is here in this picture, that's not really where we want to be. We want to be in the early part of that curve. And at this point, we're aimed pretty much right at the apex of turn 4. You can't see it very well here, but it's right there in the middle of the screen. So there are 2 approaches to turn 4. I'll talk about that on the next slide. Here I've shown kind of the line that we typically teach, which is we're not trying to stay all the way to the right of the track exiting turn 3. We're not trying to stay all the way over here to the right, but we are trying to end up mid-track, if you will, exiting here, which is what this red line shows on the diagram. So there are really 2 options in turn 4. One is to stay mid-track or the right half of the track and then turn in. Makes turn 4 a little bit easier. And as you're learning the track, for many people that is easier. But the faster / better line is to ignore the right side of the track and simply exit as we're exiting turn 3, from where the car is right now in this photo, just to aim right at the apex of turn 4, to go straight at the apex and don't worry at all about, trying to be track right to set up for it, which is the opposite of what we would typically do. But the reason that works is that it lets us carry more speed, and there's favorable camber down at that turn 4 apex that lets that work. Now, regardless of which line, some cars require a light brake. Other cars will just be a lift to set up for turn 4. But either way, we're slowing down for 4. 4 is slower than 2 and 3. And as I said, there's good grip at the apex of 4. And there is a lot of track out at 4 that we can take advantage of. So here we are, approaching turn 4, kind of from mid-track on that mid-track line. Here's the apex of 4. Here's the track out, lots of room at 4. This complex is both one of the things that gives a lot of drivers a challenge in learning the track. It's also one of those signature features of Lightning that if you get it right, feels really good. So and again,
hey, Bill,
yeah.
Bill, I had a question. This is John.
Yeah.
So so if you needed to do some braking there before 4, would you, at what point and how much, and would you prefer to be on lightly back on the gas as you go past the apex? Like, so where to brake?
Good. That's a great question, John. And since it's going to be in most cars, it's going to be a light to at most moderate brake, and we're not going to want to upset the car dramatically with a stab, with a hard stab of the brakes like we would at the end of the front straight or something. So what that means is we'd want to brake a touch earlier than you might think, but and not really hard, but enough to slow the car down. We can trail into turn 4 a little bit. Again, I said it's a slow corner, so there's no reason we can't trail brake a bit into 4. So to answer your question, I would be on the brakes as soon as I've exited the curbing at 3. As soon as I'm past that curbing, I'd be on whatever amount of brake I needed. Maybe a little bit later than that. The latest would be halfway between that apex curbing of 3 and the apex curbing of 4. And I wouldn't, I wouldn't object to carrying the brakes all the way to about here. I'd be coming off the brakes no later than where the car is in this photo. So the better way to answer your question, or to figure out the answer to your question, is, where do I have to get on the brakes so that I can come off the brake pedal roughly here, just before the apex of 4, so that by the apex of 4, I'm back on some gas or a lot of gas, depending on the car. Because we do want to use the gas exiting 4. There is a short chute here that we want to take advantage of. And so the braking needs to get us slowed down, set up for the corner so we can get on the gas. So somewhere, in that chute between 3 and 4, but so that you can smoothly come off the brakes onto the gas, about where we're looking right now in the photo.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks.
Other questions? Okay, turn 5. All of you have been there before. You know there's a big hill. That dictates really the line and how we drive this corner, and sets us up. So some comments about turn 5. It's an important corner, but we have to be careful with it. It's important because it leads to a quick section of the track, a long bendy section, but driven like a straight. But the apex is blind over the hill, and we really have to respect that and drive it accordingly, which means we have to get the turning done going up the hill before we go over the hill so that we're straight. And we have to be careful, just like in turn 1, with the amount of power we use going over the hill. And here, unlike turn 1, we want to use the track out, but unlike turn 1 where the road's straight, the road actually comes back here. So there's a lot of moving parts, if you will, for turn 5. So let's see what that looks like. So approaching it, we really want to line up the left side of the car with this curbing that's on the left here. And the turn-in point's pretty much where the cone is, but it's this last red stripe in the curbing here. We want to turn in at that point with the car pretty well straight along the left edge here. And if we do that, then we end up finding ourselves going up the hill here. But again, we're halfway up the hill in this photo. We still can't see the apex. Yeah, we can finally see the apex when we get at the top of the hill. But it's even, well past the top of the hill when we crest it. One key thing I strongly encourage all drivers, students and advanced drivers to do is put the right side of the car right on the curbing here. I'm not usually a big fan of using a lot of curb, but in this case, it helps straighten this corner out. So put the right side right along the red and white curbing on the apex here, and for 10 feet, at the apex, 5 to 10 feet, whatever. But the point is, use every bit of the road that's there. That makes this corner that much easier and by the way, safer. Now, the track out, if we're not driving, if we're not getting on the gas hard, or if we've taken the corner a little too slowly, we actually have to force ourselves to unwind the wheel and get ourselves out to track left here for track out. But do that because it helps set up the following section. And as you go faster, you have to use all of that track as you come down the hill here. It's a common mistake for students to not use all of the track out here. And it's actually, kind of an easy mistake to make, which is kind of the design of the track kind of entices us to do. Turn 6 is just the kink in the straight there. Turn 7 is a challenging corner for many people, for a lot of reasons. It's absolutely a slow in, fast out corner. But most drivers, wait too late to brake, carry too much brake into the corner, and don't set the corner up properly. The apex here is earlier than you would think, and I'll explain why in a moment, why that works. So one of the things that causes people to brake too late is here is the brake markers are way too late. I don't know why they're set where they are. Maybe a Formula One car could stop in that distance, but the rest of us need to get on the brakes before the brake markers, probably at or before the bridge in most cars, because the braking zone, when we get into it, is downhill, right? So it's not that helpful. And the way we want to drive this corner is slow in, fast out. In fact, the slowest part of this corner should be at turn in, unlike many corners where the slowest part of the corner is halfway or more to the apex. In this corner, we want the slowest point should be at turn in. And the reason for that is, and by the way, the turn in is literally the end of this curbing. So the cone's right where it should be, but the end of the curbing on the right is the turn in point. The apex is relatively early. This cone, if anything, is late for the apex here, but the apex should be, probably the seam between this first red and white stripe here, or maybe even the red. And the reason for that is, it doesn't show up very well in the photo here, but there's favorable camber, in at the apex here. As we get further around the corner, that camber goes unfavorable. And so the fast way to drive this corner, and by the way, the safe way to drive it, is to, slow down, turn in, and then actually, we can actually accelerate a bit, as we move toward the apex. And because of that camber, when we get to the apex, we can actually turn the wheel a touch more and help the car get around the corner while we're accelerating. And when we do that, we end up with lots of room at track out. If we don't do that, we end up with running out of room at track out here, because again, the camber goes away from us. So this is a very tricky corner. It's one that many drivers go off on because they're trying to brake too late for whatever reason, but it is the classic slow in, fast out corner, and one that, teaches, if you will, the benefits of knowing and reading the track surface, knowing and reading what's going on with the camber and such. A lot of that's hard to pick up unless you walk the track, but those are the dynamics in turn 7. And jump in if you have questions, because I just threw a whole bunch of stuff at you. So don't hesitate to jump in. Next up, turn 9, the light bulb or the bowl. There are basically two lines through here. I've shown what I call the inside line, which is the line I like to drive and that I typically teach. I'll discuss the other one in a moment. So the way the inside line works is, and I'll show you this in photos in a moment, we aim at the gap in the wall, we brake in a straight line along the right side of the track. I describe it as tossing the car into the banking. We let the momentum of the car just carry us up no more than halfway into the banking. We look around the corner a long, long ways and gradually wind the car down and squeeze the gas pedal on. The alternative line, some people refer to it as the Miata line, is to enter much closer to track left, make a big arc that's, I guess, slightly decreasing, and try to carry more speed through the corner. I haven't done back-to-back comparisons, so I can't definitively give an answer. I just find that the inside line feels more comfortable to me, and it's the one that I also, in my experience, has found more students are more comfortable with. So what does that look like? Well, here we are approaching the corner, and we can easily see the gap in the wall in front of us, right? The other thing I want to call to your attention is the bright white line almost in front of that along the grass. That is a more or less straight section of the track, or at least a straight section of the white line. And that is a good braking zone. Now, some cars, if you have a lot of horsepower, you have to do quite a bit of braking here. Slower cars, not as much. But whatever amount of braking, this is a good place to do it. And because it is straight. And we can definitely trail brake as we get up into the banking, but we can certainly get whatever the majority of whatever braking we need to do done in that straight line. And this is where we're kind of at the end of that straight line, and we're entering the banking, and we can still slow down because the banking is going to actually help us slow down. So we can carry a lot more speed into the banking than you might think, and just let the banking slow the car down because we can't get on the gas for a long time. This is a very long corner. We can't use the gas pedal, to do anything other than balance the car, for a while. So why not carry as much speed as we can safely do up into the banking, let it scrub some speed off, and then pick up the line and move around. Now, the other challenge here is we have to get the eyes all the way around to the right, way off of where this photo is, way beyond where this photo is. We have to be looking almost out the right side window of the car to be looking for the apex at this point. At this photo, we're further around, and I've circled, although it's hard to see in the photo, there's a culvert on the inside of the track here. That is opposite where the apex is, because we can't see the apex cone or the apex curbing for a long time, even from the perspective where the car is here, never mind where it was back here. But we can, if we get our head turned, we can see that culvert, assuming it's not covered up by weeds, which sometimes there's grass or weeds that grow over the culvert. But getting our eyes focused on that tells us where we want the car to end up as we wind our way down the banking toward the apex, and of course then track out. But picking up a reference point so that we can know where to wind the steering down, that's really the key. Once we've gotten the car into the banking here, and even we want to look at that even as we're approaching, just to get our vision. Our glance vision wants to pick that up as soon as we can. So just a quick summary of what we just went through, including some things I'll talk about here at the exit of. Actually, let me do the bottom of this slide first. As we exit the light bulb, we have to be aware, yes, it's a passing zone, but if we give a pass signal, both cars end up a little bit crowded because the track comes back to the right after we go over the hill. the hill that's in front of us here, I should have add a picture here, but we all know there's a hill here, but we also know the track turns right at the, at the point of that hill. So if we give a pass signal, both cars, the car on the left is giving the signal especially can easily run out of track. And then there's the issue that pit in is right over the hill on the right. So it's a very crowded section, and it's one that deserves a lot of respect, to pay a lot of attention to as we exit the light bulb and enter the front straight. So the other things I've mentioned around the track, any place, if you run wide, just drive off. Good thing about Lightning is it's a safe track because there's room on the outside of pretty much every corner here. So if you do overcook it and need to drive off, there's plenty of room to drive off. Unlike some tracks, that's not true at Lime Rock. It's not true at Watkins Glen. It is true here. So, drive off if we need to. Turn 5 deserves a lot of respect given the hill that's there. Turn 7 requires more braking than most people think. Most people overdrive it. That's more of an issue for advanced drivers than it is for students, but it does suck us in because it's downhill, the braking marker's in the wrong place, and so on.